So we have 18. 5 squared is 25. 6 squared is 36. Plus 6, 3 goes into 6 twice. And 3 goes into 15 5 times. So we have 5 times 5, which is 25, over 2, minus 10. Okay, so we know 18 goes into 18 one time. 18 goes into 36 twice. So we have 25 over 2 plus 25 over 2 minus 10. Oh, bring that up a little bit. Okay. Now we can only add or subtract fractions if they have matching denominators, which means we have to give this a denominator of 2. So we can make 10 equals 20 divided by 2. So that means we can just rewrite it as 25 over 2 plus 25 over 2 minus 20 over 2. So you have 25 plus 25, which is 50. 50 minus 20 is 30. So we have 30 over 2, which ends up being 15. So we know that f of 5 over 6 is equal to 15, which means we can just give it the point of 5 over 6, 15, which gives us our second point on the graph. So point number 2 on the graph. All right. So any questions on that one? Yes.
If couldn't you just have done 25 over 2 plus 25 over 2, that would equal 50 over 2, and then obviously 25 minus 10 equals 15.
Oh yeah, you could have done it. Yeah.
Does it really matter at all?
Oh no, not at all.
All right.
If you wanted to make them all fractions and do it that way, or if you wanted to combine those two, you could have done it that way too.
All right.
All right. Any other questions on this one? All right. Leave that up for a few more seconds. Alrighty. Okay, so what if we had a story problem that said the perimeter, straighten that up, of a triangle let's say it's 58 feet. And let's say we want to find the length of its sides. Okay, and we are given the picture of a triangle. And one side is x squared minus 2x. This side is x squared minus 2. And this side is x squared minus x. Okay. Now remember, with the perimeter is just the sum of all the sides. And sum is just a fancy way to say add. Oop. There we go. Okay. So that means if we're going to add all those sides together, we'll get an answer of 58. That means x squared minus 2x plus x squared minus 2 plus x squared minus x. You add them together, you get 58. Okay. Since we're adding them all together, we don't really need the parentheses. So x squared minus 2x plus x squared minus 2 plus x squared minus x equals 58. Okay. So now the first thing we want to do is combine what we can combine. So you have an x squared, an x squared, and an x squared. You have an x term and an x term. So we can go ahead and combine those. So you have x squared plus x squared plus x squared, which is 3x squared. You have negative 2x minus x, which is minus 3x. And that little old lonely minus 2 just stays minus 2. Equals 58. Now we know we have to put it into standard form, so we subtract 58 from both sides. Okay, so if we subtract 58 and subtract 58, that just becomes 0. And move that up a little bit. So we end up with 3x squared minus 3x. Minus 2 minus 58 gives us minus 60 equals 0. Okay. Which means if we wanted to, we can go ahead and just use the A times C method to solve it. But if we look closely, you can see you can factor 3 out of each of those terms. So if we factor 3 out of each term, we can actually avoid the A times C method on this one. So we avoid the A times C method. Okay, so if we factor out our 3 times x squared gives us 3x squared. 3 times negative x gives us our negative 3x. And 3 times negative 20 gives us our negative 60 equals 0. Since we didn't factor out a variable, we just factored out a number. Divide both sides by 3, where those two will cancel out. And we have x squared minus x minus 20 equals 0. Which is a whole lot easier to solve than 3x squared minus 3x minus 60.
So
Yes.
only divide the 3, only if we put it in standard form first and then it equals 0.
Yep, and then you just factor out,
Okay.
if you can factor it out. Okay, so now since we have it to where nothing's in front of the x squared, we can just use the direct factoring approach to where you find two numbers that multiply to equal your c, and you add those two numbers to equal your b. So this one we know 5 times 4 is 20, but since you multiply them and they're negative, and the largest number would have to be negative for you to add them, that gives us -5 and +4, which works for both of them. Ooh. So that means this one just becomes x minus 5 times x plus 4 equals 0. Okay. And once you have it factored, we do just like we did before. And we set both of those to 0. Okay, so we end up with x minus 5 equals 0, or x plus 4 equals 0. Well, if we add 5 to both sides, we have x equals 5. Or, if we subtract 4 from both sides, x equals -4. Okay. Now that doesn't give us the length of the sides, it just tells us what x is. So really, the only thing left to do is to plug into each side, which we will do on the next page since we're running out of space. Leave that up for a few more seconds. Oops. Alright. So, just going to redraw the triangle from the beginning. That's our x squared minus 2x, x squared minus 2, x squared minus x, and our answers are x equals 5 and x equals -4. Okay, so first we'll plug in our x equals 5. Okay, now for this side, our x squared minus 2x, that gives us 5 squared minus 2 times 5. All we do is just plug in the 5. Okay, which is 25 minus 10, which is 15. Now for this side, our x squared minus 2, just replace x with 5, so we get 5 squared minus 2, or 25 minus 2. Which is 23. Okay. And for the last side, our x squared minus x side, that's just 5 squared minus 5, which is 25 minus 5, which is 20. Okay. Now these are the lengths of the sides when x equals 5. Now we plug in -4, we'll get 3 different lengths. But both of them would actually be true. Okay, so when x is equal to -4, again, we started our x squared minus 2x. Oops. x squared minus 2x. That just becomes 4 squared minus 2 times 4. Oh, negative 4 squared. Minus 2 times negative 4. So you end up with 16 plus 8, which is 24. Okay. Now for the x squared minus 2, that's going to be negative 4 squared minus 2, which is 16 minus 2, which is 14. And for the x squared minus x, that's going to equal negative 4 squared minus negative 4, or 16 plus 4 in this case, which is 20. Okay, so these are the lengths of the side when x is equal to negative 4. Okay, so any questions on that one? All right, one last example.
Oh, wait, so the answer is these two,
Yep,
right?
yep, those are the lengths and those are the lengths.
So on the assignment, we'll have to like show both like what both.
Oh yeah, they'll have,
points
like,
would be.
they'll probably say separate them by commas and you just put all of them.
Okay.
Most of the answers are just separated by commas. All right, leave it up for a few more seconds. Oh, this is in the right order, yeah. Okay, and just before I do the last example, just do a quick refresher. Okay, so let's say if you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just consecutive numbers, consecutive integers rather. Okay, if they ask for 2 consecutive integers, okay, let's say if you started at 2, we'll make that your x. To move up to the next consecutive integer, you just add 1. If you started here, to move up to the next consecutive integer, you just add 1. So when you see 2 consecutive integers, it's always going to be x and x plus 1. So if you start at 80, the next consecutive integer will be 81. But let's say if you had 56, 58, 60, 62, and so forth and so on and so on. Just even integers. If they ask for 2 consecutive even integers, and let's say if you decide to start at 58, we'll make that our x. To go to the next even integer, you'll have to add 2. If you started at 60, to go to the next one, you'd have to add 2. So for consecutive even integers, it's x and x plus 2. And same thing with odd. If you had, let's say, 105, 107, 109, 111, and it keeps on going and going and going. Two consecutive odd integers. Again, if you start at 107, and that's your x, to move to the next odd integer, you'd have to add 2. Same thing here, to go from 109 to 111, you'd have to add 2. So when they ask for 2 consecutive odd integers, it's still going to be x and x plus 2. So the only one that's not x and x plus 2 are just consecutive integers. When they ask for even or odd, those are going to be them. Yes?
If you look for a product, like 2 consecutive even integers,
Mm-hmm.
let's say 168.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how would you find it?
Oh, you just multiply x and x plus 2. Actually, that's going to be our next example, the one similar to that one. Yep, you just multiply them together. All right, so I'll leave that up, and we'll do the last example. Actually, I have another 3 examples, but I'll just upload those on Canvas since we're pretty low on time. I went a little example crazy. All right, so let's say, for example, the product of 2 consecutive even integers is 224. And they want us to find the integers. I wanted to make sure to do this one because the end is a little bit tricky. Okay, so remember when they say 2 consecutive even integers, that's just x and x plus 2. Okay. Now, you know when they say the product of them, you're just going to multiply. Okay, so when you see the product of them, you have x times x plus 2, and we know that product is 224. So it's equal to 24. Okay, so we know we have to put it in standard form, so we have to get rid of the parentheses and bring everything over to one side. So we go ahead and distribute that x. That gives us x times x, which is x squared. X times 2 is 2x equals 224. Or to put it in standard form, x squared plus 2x minus 224 equals 0. Okay, so we have it in standard form. We don't have anything in front of the x squared, so we can just use the straightforward method to factor. So we have to find 2 numbers that multiply to equal our c, which is negative 224. And those same 2 numbers add together to equal our b, which is 2. Okay. For the sake of time, we know it's going to be negative 14 and 16. Which means that this is going to become x minus 14, x plus 16 equals 0. Okay, so we know we just have to set both of those to 0. So x minus 14 equals 0, or x plus 16 equals 0. So if we add 14 to both sides, x equals 14. Or if we subtract 16, x equals negative 16. Yes?
I kind of noticed in the homework, the answer is it's like a bracket, 2 boxes on each side now. how would you?
I'm glad you noticed that because these are not consecutive integers. That's why I said this was a little bit tricky. That's why I wanted to make sure you saw this one.
Yeah.
Because if you ran across it on the homework, remember your consecutive integers are x and x plus 2. So when x equals 14, that means your x and your x plus 2 is going to be 14 and 14 plus 2. So it's going to be 14 and 16. But when x is equal to negative 16, then that means your x and x plus 2 is going to be negative 16 and negative 16 plus 2. So you're actually going to end up with negative 16 and negative 14.
So you have like two separate. So that's how you. So the one box would be the one bracket would be 14, 16. And the other bracket would be negative
16, negative. Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to, because I know that one would have had a lot of questions. So I wanted to make sure to go over at least one like this one.
So it's two answers.
Yep, you have two separate sets that will make this true. All right. Okay, so any questions on that one? All right, and the other examples I will upload with the class notes. Nope, I'll put that. Oh. Does anyone need to sign?
You won't know. It's not like his own professional, some new guy.
I know they have a school.
No, I was watching.
No, I didn't start that yet. Isn't that decent?
Yep, you know. Okay. All right. You know, I think you said the first week, the first 2 weeks would be the 13th. Okay, last 2 weeks. Oh, okay. All right.
I'll get that.
All right. Thanks. Oh, there you go.
When are you gonna give us back our grade? I mean, our answers from the last exam.
From the last one, the answers will be uploaded probably later today, and you get your exams back on Thursday.
Okay, thanks.
Nope, no problem. Thank you. Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, you have a good one.
Thanks, you too.
Enjoy the rest of your day.